Silicon Valley, technology, art, green, and sustainability. Welcome to another episode of Silicon Valley Tech, Art, Green, and Sustainability. Today I'm very honored to have two ladies with me, Kirsten Flynn and Susan Can. And you're both doing amazing work on your own with Ask a Pro and also with you have two meetup groups. And you're also doing some sustainable products. But besides that, you're also doing EcoTuesday, which is amazing that you're doing all of that. And welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I was reading your bios and kind of doing a little more research, and it was like, whoa, these ladies are just really cool. So tell us a little about yourself, Susan. Tell us. We got to travel up to San Francisco to an EcoTuesday. And I got to learn a little bit about you then, and I read some more online, and it's like, wow, just amazing person.
Oh my goodness. I don't feel like I'm an amazing person. I just feel like I'm a regular human being that basically, I just turned 60, and I think when I turned 50, I started learning to follow my passion. And it's just like there were things that started bothering me in my life. That were happening in the world, and I just thought it's time to do something about this. I just can't sit back any longer. It's either be part of the solution or you're still a part of the problem.
And what you're doing now, have you always been in these fields, or what did you do before?
No. Well, I've always been sort of self-employed. I don't like working for other people. And I like telling myself what to do. I don't like other people telling me what to do. And so I actually had a children's resale store in Berkeley for many years. We opened it in 1984, and that was a wonderful business to be in. We were really helping the community, and it was a lot of work and not much money, but it just was a real feel-good business. I started a publishing company, wrote a book about how to have fun, healthy fun with children in the Santa Barbara area, and self-published that book. This was back in 1981. I worked for Stanford University for many years in communications and marketing, graphic design, and got laid off and started selling skincare, of all things. Yeah,
so working at Stanford and then in Berkeley, is that what brought you to the Bay Area, or are you a native?
I grew up in the slums of Richmond, and my father was a chemist, and he was actually inventing weed killers. Lovely.
Wow.
And we moved to the El Cerrito Hills, and my mother was an RN, and she retired and just took care of the kids. And I grew up in just an upper middle class home and did the normal middle class kid things. Although when I was growing up in the 50s and 60s next door to Berkeley, I remember my parents wanted to find out what it felt like to be, what is it called when you're down in Berkeley, walking along Telegraph Avenue and the police roll that stuff down the street to break up the crowds?
Oh, the smoke?
Tear gas? Tear gas. They wanted
Oh.
to know what it was like to be tear gassed. So.
Interesting parents.
Yeah, interesting parents.
I love it.
Yeah.
The stories you could tell us, right?
Yeah. Well, that's from growing up in the 60s and hanging out on Telegraph and hitchhiking to the Haight. But I was a really good girl.
And Kirsten, tell us about you.
I also was a very good girl. So I'm like Susan, I'm a Bay Area native, and maybe there's something about growing up in such a beautiful area that makes you sort of inclined towards loving and wanting to protect the natural world. But I had 15 years as a textile designer working in the corporate world. I worked for Levi Strauss, amongst other large companies, doing textile design and computer-aided textile design. And in '97, shortly after the birth of my third child, I decided I wanted to align my creative career with my environmental values. And I did a bunch of research of where I could go with that. And of course, it's logical that I end up as an interior designer, but I explored a lot of other career options first and decided that where I fit best in the field of green building was being a green interior designer. So I went back to school, got some training, and I've been taking clients since 2002.
And so I guess that leads me to the next question then, the sustainable living and green design, that's really where you're at, right? And,
yeah.
And Ask a Pro, I had no idea that you were doing that. So tell us about that a little bit.
Okay. So in addition to doing private clients, and I do residential interior design work, I also answer questions relating. Both Susan and I are very concerned about chemicals in our everyday environment.
Which these actually we're sitting on are, I can't remember the name of the company that gave them to us when we first started, but they're all sustainable.
Oh, that's very
nice.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's great.
I don't know
great.
about this one. This came from the lobby.
Oh, that's where you put me, right?
I'm sure it is, though.
But so I work with clients to, once you make a nice energy efficient green home, then every product you bring in is very important. And so as an extension of that residential work, I do pro bono design work. So I've worked with 2 different Stanford Solar Decathlon teams on their entries in that national solar homes contest that's put on by
Stanford
the department.
and Santa Clara, or
I did Santa Clara in 2007, and I'm mentoring Stanford this year. So
Santa Clara, did they enter this year or no?
They did. They just didn't want, they rolled around and worked with different people in different years. And
and let's go back to that, because let's just explain the solar decathlon to people.
Oh,
But go ahead and finish about the Ask the Pro.
So I do that, and then I also answer questions at the Ask a Pro website, which is part of Green Home Guide. Green Home Guide is part of the U.S. Green Building Council, and Green Home Guide answers sort of the residential questions. A lot of the U.S. Green Building Council's effort is to make green buildings that are commercial buildings, and the Green Home Guide is a little bit more slanted towards the residential client. And if you have a question, if any of the viewers have a question about pressing question about making their home greener, they can write in, and me or somebody else will answer the question.
Well, and I thought it was fascinating. Somebody was asking about a couch that was going to be donated by a friend, and I read through that. It was a great article. I passed it on.
Oh, thank you.
And some of the things that you just don't even think about that, it's great. You're getting this, it's economical to pass things on instead of putting in the landfill, but what was it made out of?
Yes.
And the chemicals that were sprayed on it. I didn't realize that it was sprayed on it.
Yeah, actually, that's one of my big areas of activism is brominated and halogenated fire retardants, which are a chemical that's a known endocrine disruptor. Like so many chemicals, we assume that if they're in the marketplace, they must have been tested by someone and they must be safe. But that is in no way true in the United States,
and I think
unfortunately.
Susan will be touching on some of that
Yeah,
in a little
absolutely.
bit here. Yeah.
So then, additionally, I work with Actera, judging their Environmental Business Awards. So basically, I work in a lot of avenues trying to help people become aware of the concerns in the environment, and especially related to architecture and interior design.
So let's go. We have 4 slides of your work that's beautiful. Let's go ahead and bring those slides up so we can
that would
talk
be
about
nice,
those right now. And it's just beautiful work. This is the first slide here.
So that's a kitchen. It was actually a Stanford professor, and she loves books, as you can imagine that a professor would. And so the significant thing when you're building a kitchen or cabinetry, this is a bank of cabinetry, is that one of the components of cabinetry is oriented strand board, and that might contain formaldehyde. So these are formaldehyde-free cabinets.
And that's one of the things is you don't know if you're buying stuff at Home Depot, right?
You don't know what's in it. And
processed
so much,
with.
That's one of the reasons I try to speak publicly so much, because not everyone can hire me, but everyone does deserve to have formaldehyde-free cabinetry. And it's only a question that you need to ask.
And I don't know if it's just because of the circles I have run in, but it seems like there's let's go to Omega Salvage Art, or let's go here and buy some of the old wood that's, solid wood and not actually been
and that's a great
together.
way to go.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
and some people probably wouldn't even think about that. So it's something that has to be
Yeah.
educated.